Be honest, when was the last time you used a photocopier? Yeah, me neither. But once upon a time, Xerox wasn't just a machine in the corner of your office. It was a machine that made your boss very happy or made you very upset because there were such things called paper jams. But let me be serious for a second. For those of you that don't know Xerox, Xerox is a technology company that helps organizations manage documents and improve productivity through printers, software, or services. One of its most notable inventions was the photocopier. It was once the king of office supplies. Literally, it was the iPhone of its time. Today, we're going to be diving into the incredible journey of Xerox and the even more incredible woman who led it, Ursula Burns, the first Black woman CEO of a Fortune 500 company. From the New York housing projects to corporate boardrooms, from copier queen to tech trailblazer, she didn't just break glass ceilings, she rewrote the entire manual. I'm really excited about this week's episode. I'm going to be sharing my own personal story, but I also want to dive into the trailblazer that she was and what you can learn from her that you can leverage and use in your life and your day to day, and most importantly, in your business as you grow and scale. This is going to be a good one. Let's go ahead and dive in. Oh, yeah, really quickly, before we dive into this episode, I want to share my own personal story. I've actually met Ursula Burns back when I was in high school. She came to speak at our chapel. And what I remember most about her, because I had no idea who she was, I had no idea at that time how much of an impact she's had and how of a big deal she was. What I remember most about her was her own personal story of starting from the bottom and working her way all the way up. What I remember most about her was the inspiration her mom took in her life and all her teachings that her mom taught her and how she used that to navigate through life, which reminded me of my own mom. She was unapologetic and 1000% herself and real. I could see how her confidence would attract the real people and keep fake people outside. She was very confident. I had no idea who she was. All I remember was the title CEO, and she was a Black woman. The older folks made a big deal about her. But again, I was in high school. I didn't even know what I wanted to do in life. When she walked on stage, I could feel her presence. Even though I didn't know what she did, her presence alone on that stage, I knew she was important. Let's go ahead and dive in.
Woo! Hey, it's been a long time and I miss this feeling. It feels like freedom, it feels like healing. Floating off the floor, past the ceiling. The wind in my hair, I can see the...
This is a story unlike any that you've ever heard before. It's a story about the first Black woman CEO of a Fortune 500 company. It's one thing to be successful when you have a blueprint, come from a wealthy family, and did it all surrounded by successful people that look like you. This is not that story. This is a different one. She different. One with resilience, opportunities, and inner drive. I'm currently reading on Ursula Burns. I have all the documents in front of me, her memoir, her books, interviews, YouTube, everything as I consume the knowledge that she's imparted and what I learned about her throughout her career. One of the things I want to read is from her memoir, and it says, I am a Black woman. I do not play golf. I do not belong to or go to country clubs. I do not like NASCAR. I do not listen to country music. And I have a master's degree in engineering. I, like a typical New Yorker, speak very fast with an accent and vernacular that is definitely New York City, definitely Black. So when someone says, I'm going to introduce you to the next CEO of Xerox, and the options are lined up against the wall, I would be the first one voted off the island. This is a excerpt, a quote by Ursula in her book, and it was really fascinating for me to read this because if you were to line up a lot of the CEOs, Ursula would stand out. Not because she would probably be the only Black CEO of a Fortune 500 company, but the fact that she was different. We're going to talk about how some of these differences made her stand out and made her the person she is today. Imagine all the odds stacked against you. You're navigating through life where, based on your circumstances, you're not supposed to eventually be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. This is the story of Ursula Burns. Ursula was raised in a very tough neighborhood and environment. She grew up in the projects on Manhattan Lower East Side. The two notable things that stood out in her childhood was one, she didn't know she was at a disadvantage based on her circumstance. I understand this because growing up poor, I didn't realize I was poor until I got around other people, until other people told me I was poor. I say this because my mom did everything that she could in order to support us. So that's why, as I was reading Ursula's story, a lot of what she had experienced, I could relate to the things that she was saying. She didn't know she was at a disadvantage based on her circumstance. And the second thing was her mom had a profound impact on her growing up, and she would take a lot of the lessons that her mom instilled in her in order to navigate the outside world. And this is going to be really important. Her mom is a really important figure in her life. And I want to talk about her mom for a second and some of those things that she instilled in her growing up. Ursula's mother was named Olga, and I hope I am pronouncing it right. Olga Burns immigrated from Panama and raised 3 children. She was navigating motherhood entirely on her own. She had multiple jobs, but she had a relentless hustle. She juggled jobs doing home daycare, ironing clothes, cleaning. Her mom was a hustler, y'all. Her mom was trying to do everything she could in order to give her kids an advantage, in order to give her kids a normal life. One of the things that her mom figured was she needed to make sure her kids got a good education because she lacked formal education. She sent them to a private Catholic school, and that meant sacrificing a lot on her plate in order to give her kids an opportunity. One of her mom's famous saying was, God doesn't like ugly. And I'm going to talk about some of these famous sayings in a second. And where you are is not who you are, which is a reflection of having a deep belief in your character, dignity, and your potential. And that would end up becoming the title of her book. If you were to ask Ursula how her childhood was, she would tell you that her mom kept her fed, kept her clean, and in school despite having a rough environment. Her mom shielded her from the stress and financial hardships. Her mom ends up dying young at 49 when Ursula was just 25. One of her mom's famous saying was, God doesn't like ugly. And this was her mom's favorite saying because it wasn't about the physical appearance, but it referred to the ugliness of character, being mean, selfish, or dishonest. The second thing, where you are is not who you are. This phrase became the title of Ursula's memoir. Her mom used it to remind Ursula of this constantly, especially during difficult times growing up in the New York City housing project. The idea was that poverty or environment should never define identity or limit ambition. Because you started here, that does not mean you are the things that are around you. That doesn't mean you have to be here. You can still expand beyond this. She instilled in Ursula a relentless work ethic. She expected her kids to pull their weight. She was sacrificing everything to position her kids to do more. Even though she wasn't formally educated, she was smart. Does that make sense? Most people think that education means you are smart, but that's actually not true. Her mom was street smart. Her mom was book smart. Her mom had vision. And a lot of times when you're navigating through something and you're focusing on your lack, you need to focus on the things that you do have. Ursula went to an all-girl Catholic high school in New York. She mentioned that during her time at this school, she was trying to figure out the things that she was good at. One of the things she was good at was math, but she felt like she was only good in math compared to her peers at the school, not compared to the standards of the competitive world. She felt she was a below average student. And this is one of the things you'll see early on is Ursula's downplaying herself and what she's capable of doing. But what you'll notice is that there are people that will come later in her life that show her that she's capable of so much more. You'll start seeing the confidence being instilled in her. One of her first major decisions came while she was in high school. One day, one of the nuns asked a simple question to Ursula. They asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? Ursula had no idea. The nun then said, you could be one of these 3 things. You could either be a nun, you could be a nurse, or you could be a teacher. And at this point, the nun is expecting Ursula to jump out and say, yes, I want to do one of these things. But in Ursula's mind, she was a very respectful individual. She was just nodding in agreement. Here's what really happened. In her mind, she realized that I don't want to be any of these things. Instead of picking one of the 3 options, she took a different path entirely. She would go to the library to find a book around careers. And in this book, she was looking for the highest paying job after college. She realized that she wanted to still help her family. She wants to help her mom. She comes from a bad environment. She wants to change that. She wants to be able to contribute to that household. And so in this book, at the very top of the list of the highest paying job was chemical engineering. Did she know what it was at that time? Absolutely not. But she saw that it was the highest paying job, and so therefore that's what she was gonna be. Does that make sense to y'all? Because that makes sense to me. That is literally how I picked my major going into college. And many people from hard backgrounds, they tried to look for ways to contribute to the family, and because they see their mothers or their family struggling and they want to be able to help immediately. That was my thought process when I was making my decision as to what did I want to do. But there's another layer to the story that I want to make sure that resonates with you and that you understand. Often, limitations are placed on you. It reflects the limited aspirations society places on women, right? Particularly from underrepresented backgrounds. It also reflects that how small suggestions or boxed in options can shape or restrict dreams. If you are a young girl, a young boy, and someone older than you, which you feel is wiser than you, is telling you that, hey, you should do these things. Hey, these are your three options. You can't do anything else. You have to understand that it restricts your dreams because then you see yourself as that because you're like, they're smarter, they're wiser than me. This must be true. This is a story that, again, is so interweaved in my own life when I was thinking about going to colleges and someone that I had admired, I won't call any names out, told me that I shouldn't have those dreams. And it crushed me. It really crushed me. And then I thought, dang, like, why am I working so hard? Maybe I shouldn't be working this hard as my dreams are out of reach. And I know you know what I'm talking about because I'm sure people have tried to restrict your dreams. I'm sure that you have dreams that you said out loud and someone starts questioning and ripping down the entire dream that you've had. I'm sure there are dreams that you're keeping close to your chest and you're worried about sharing them out loud. The third thing, if you live your life as being a curious person that you're always going to question and you're always going to research and you're always going to dive into and you're always going to at least try something on your own to then make the determination and not let other people's restrictions define you, then you have a possibility of breaking through the ceilings because you have that curious background. For me, that's one of the things that got me through when other people are telling me the things that I can't do. I'm like, let me go try it. Let me see for myself. Let me put myself in that environment. Let me actually see if they're right or I'm right. And with what I've always found is 100% of the time, I'm always right. Curiosity has allowed me to break through the limitations that other people have tried to place on me. And the same thing was true for Ursula. And the same thing could be true for you right now. Ursula goes through high school. She ends up deciding this is what I want to do. This is what I want to major in. She goes to college and she says in her book that I didn't know a damn thing about what engineers did. She found what she wanted to do as a career, but she had no idea what an engineer did. She had no idea about anything. And she mentions that she didn't know a lot about chemistry and what a chemical engineer did. She ends up getting into Brooklyn Poly in New York and pretty much close to home. She entered through the Higher Education Opportunity Program, which at that time supported academically and economically disadvantaged students in the New York State. This program, it was designed for students who had the potential but lacked traditional preparation. It was a summer bridge course, tutoring, and personal counseling, all of which Ursula credits for helping her survive and thrive. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because there are programs out there that offer you an opportunity, but you have to do the work in finding these programs. You have to take advantage of them. And at school, Ursula, initially, she studied chemical engineer, but later she switched it to mechanical engineer, which she found was more aligned with her strengths and interests. Remember, one of the things early on she noticed about herself, or other people noticed about her, was that she was very analytical. She was really good with math. She graduates with a bachelor degree in mechanical engineer and would later go to earn her master's degree in mechanical engineer from Columbia University. Let's go. So the disadvantage, the thing that she thought she was bad at, she ended up going to master. And it's one or two things. You either hate it and you never want to do it again, or you hate it enough that you decide you're going to master it. And that's exactly what Ursula did. She said, wait a second now, I'm going to master mechanical engineer. And not only that, but I'm going to go to Columbia University, a top institution, and get my degree from there. And she did this while she was working at Xerox. I want to mention about the time when she switched her major is that she had a mentor named Connie Costa. And Connie was very pivotal in helping her switch from chemical engineer, right, to mechanical engineering. And so here we go again with people that come into your life that just steer you in a direction and say, hey, you don't have to quit this whole thing, but what if you just pivot it just a little bit here? It's really important how other people's exposure could shape what you do and could define your role and define your career and help you navigate that as well. When she went to grad school, it wasn't as easy. Remember, she was working at Xerox and she was attending Columbia. She was taking night classes. It was a hard grind. She pursued her master's in mechanical engineering at night while working full time. She always understood the longer vision, the bigger picture. And she understood, okay, I need to sacrifice my nights and weekends in order to get there. Many of us, when it comes to taking away our nights and weekends, we're like, wait, that's a boundary of mine. But you have to understand, in order to get to where you've never been, and if you have a bigger calling in life, you have to understand sacrifices come with a bigger position. While she was pursuing her master's, she was working at Xerox. She first started as a mechanical engineering intern in the 1980s. For those of you that are not familiar with Xerox, was primarily at that time known as a hardware company. So think of printers, copiers, scanners. That's what they were known for. They were around the office. They weren't really in the home because back in the 80s, they were very expensive equipment. It's like when the computers first came out. They were like $10,000 to purchase a computer when it first came out. And it was big. It wasn't like a laptop or a handheld device like the iPhone or a phone. Xerox at that time had a chokehold on corporate clients. They were making money at that time, but their reputation was known as a hardware company and one of the more inclusive companies at that time, especially for Black professionals and women, thanks to its internal diversity program and history of recruiting from historical Black colleges and universities. Xerox was doing a good job of being open to talent from all backgrounds, not from certain backgrounds, but from all backgrounds. They understood that talent came from everywhere, and they were looking to hire the best on merit. Like, we want the best, and we don't care where the best comes from. So show us what you could do. And as an intern, she worked on technical tasks. She gained a lot of hands-on experience, but what she was known for was her directness, her confidence, and her sharp analytical skills. These traits caught the attention of her advisors. So from an intern, they're like, wait a second, she's really good with this numbers thing. She's really good when it comes to being analytical. And we want her to come back. In 1981, she joined Xerox full-time as a product development engineer. She was involved in helping design copier and printing systems. That's what she did at the company, which was a perfect match for her mechanical engineering background. In the beginning, she was doing everything. She was learning all throughout the company. And she stood out because of her ability to solve problems, convey what the problem was, and then take initiative to make sure the problem was being solved. How many of y'all would love an employee like that? How many of y'all would love a leader like that? Early in her career at Xerox, there was a pivotal moment that happened. She was attending a meeting with an executive vice president named Waylon Hicks. Most young employees would have stayed quiet, but not Ursula. She challenged him directly on the company's commitment to diversity. And instead of being offended, Waylon Hicks was really impressed by her directness and her confidence. He noticed and he saw there was something inside of this young woman. Shortly after, he invited her to be his executive assistant. This would end up being a career-defining opportunity. Remember, Waylon at this time is executive vice president at Xerox. Now, Ursula, being connected to the executive vice president, was going to have access to a lot of top leadership and strategy meetings. This is why it was a career-defining moment. This is why this role became a turning point. This role became a turning point. It gave her exposure to upper management, strategy discussions, and the big picture side of running a company. Let's talk about her climb and ascension throughout the company. Executive assistant in the early 1990s to senior leaders like the vice president, and then to senior leaders like the CEO at that time. She would learn a lot. Imagine being around the VP all the time. Imagine being around the CEO. You're learning firsthand about leadership, around the organization, around structure, around how things are being ran. And then she would take roles across different business units, learning operations, global strategy, or product development. She was literally everywhere. In 2007, she became president. And in 2009, she became the CEO of Xerox, becoming the first Black woman to lead a Fortune 500 company. But there were challenges as well, and I don't want to leave out these challenges. The first challenge was early in her career, she was often the only Black woman in rooms full of white male engineers and executives. Yet instead of blending in, she was known for calling out inefficiencies or BS in meetings. One of the challenges she would say was that there wasn't anyone else in the rooms that looked like her. She had to figure out how to navigate in a room full of people that did not look like her, did not have the same upbringings as her, did not talk like her, weren't as direct as her. The other challenge she faced was she refused to alter her New York accent or soften her language. Now, I've met Ursula personally, and I can tell you something, she is a very direct woman. What I would say is that it may offend people that are not direct people that she is direct. But I loved her directness. I love her approach. I loved her aura when I met her. There was challenges though when a lot of times and often we are told to code switch. When you're in this environment, make sure you don't talk like that. But Ursula kept it 100% real. And I wish that I had 1% of her confidence. I wish a lot of people had 1% of her confidence. Even though this was a positive, in the corporate environment, some folks would say that this wasn't a positive. The fact that she was very bold and she didn't let corporate mold her into who corporate wanted her to be, these were things that people would say were things that she needed to work on, but she didn't feel like that. And then the other setback she would have as she would move throughout the company, notice that she's working everywhere in the company, but she's not at the forefront of the company. During her time, there was a lot of corporate reorganizations. Often, whenever she would take leadership roles, she was occasionally moved out of high visibility roles. So her company's already conspiring against this woman. Every time she works her way up, they're restructuring to move her out of high visibility roles because they don't see someone like her being a leader. They don't see someone like her as a good representation of what Xerox is. That's what I take away from this. I don't know what you take away from this, but I'm just reading the tea leaves here. There was a point when people realized just how smart she was, just how analytical she was, and they would see her potential. And at one point, a mentor told her to change how she presented herself in board meetings. And I know you would probably go off. If someone were to come to you and say, hey, you know what, you need to change yourself. You need to talk like this. You need to dress like this. Ursula, instead of getting defensive, she would navigate and adjust a little bit. She was better than me. She was better than most of us, but she was playing the long game. You have to understand, it took her a long time to climb the corporate ladder, no matter how smart she was, to eventually become the CEO. Every time she was climbing and different departments and getting to the top of the department, they would restructure her role and she would have to start all over many times because the company didn't see that she reflected their values, that she should be visible. And every time she would go and just show just how valuable she was. And that's what I love about her. That's what makes her story remarkable, isn't just the rise, but it's that she rose by being unapologetically herself in spaces that weren't built for her. She used every stage, from intern to assistant to executive, to learn deeply, speak truthfully, and lead confidently. There were a lot of notable achievements in her career. Before she became the CEO of Xerox, she was the senior vice president in the early 2000s, and she managed the global R&D operations. R&D is research and development. One of the things that she did as senior vice president was that she helped reposition Xerox from a hardware-based company to a services and solutions provider. And this is important to understand because she understood that we can't just do hardware. We have to do more than hardware if we are going to survive this digital age that's going to come. Because at that time, computers were getting really popular. But she also saw that, okay, we have to make sure we're generating revenue, just not from hardware. And this was a very smart move because later on, this was essentially what would lay the foundation for a transformation from hardware to hardware and services. Fast forward in 2009, she becomes the CEO of Xerox. She becomes the first Black woman to lead a Fortune 500 company. Her yearly salary in 2009, remember this 2009 we're talking about, her base salary was around $960,000, but with bonuses and stock awards and options, she earned about $10.5 million in total compensation in 2009 alone. That means that if your company hits all the milestones, all the projections, and makes a surplus, a lot of times you get additional payouts based on your stock options, based on bonuses and payouts. Eventually, her compensation would rise to 13 to 15 million annually, placing her among the highest paid female executives in the world. So congrats, Ursula. She was getting that bag. And this is what happens when you become a CEO of a Fortune 500 company or a major company. Corporations have that bag. A lot of times people think you could only make a lot of money, be an entrepreneur, but that's not true. If you're really good at what you do, there's a role for you at a company and they're willing to pay you any amount of money that you desire based on the skill, based on the knowledge that you provide, the know-how. This is really important to understand that there's more than one way, there's more than one path in order to make money and still enjoy the things that you do and be able to add value as well. At Xerox, one of the major business moves that she did as CEO, because she understood we have to move from a hardware company to hardware and services, one of her first moves would be to acquire ACS, Affiliated Computer Services. So when she takes her role as CEO in 2009, this is one of her first moves she wants to do. And this acquisition was a $6.4 billion acquisition. And she understood that ACS, what they did really was the service side of business. And she could partner a product and hardware business in order to make sure they're getting an all-in-one company. She was thinking ahead. The $6.4 billion acquisition transformed Xerox from a printing and copying giant into a business process outsourcing and services company. This move more than doubled Xerox workforce because when you're acquiring a company, you're bringing in all their people as well. And the goal was to create new revenue beyond hardware. Think HR, finance, IT services. This is what the ACS acquisition was going to bring into Xerox, more revenue stream. Remember, at that time, Xerox was primarily known as a hardware company. It was a legacy brand. Think of Blockbuster. Remember that story how Netflix came to Blockbuster and said, hey, can you buy us? And Blockbuster was like, no, why would we want to buy you? And at that time, Netflix was a streaming service. But Blockbuster was a legacy brand. Everyone knew Blockbuster, no one knew Netflix. You could see how the tables turn over time. When you don't have vision, you get stuck in what you're currently doing. You think what you're doing is the most important thing and that it will never be impacted or changed. And here comes Netflix. And here comes ACS. And Ursula says, I see a longer vision. We're going to go ahead and acquire this company. She saw the numbers. She saw the warning signs. The printer and copier business was shrinking. People were going paperless. There was competition with the other competitors from the HPs, the Canon, and then there was new digital companies emerging in the space as well. She understood that Xerox needed to evolve fast or risk becoming irrelevant. ACS was such a major acquisition because ACS at that time specialized in managing back office operations for companies and governments. They managed payroll and HR services, call centers, health benefit systems for states, and IT infrastructure and consulting. These are all things and all areas that use the hardware that Xerox was providing. Ursula saw that if we acquired ACS, the software and the back office operations that they're using to also manage our clients, we could not only survive, but we could thrive. We could actually bring in more revenue. We could actually be ushered into the digital age. We could actually be relevant and not irrelevant. One of the things she had mentioned as I was reading around this acquisition was, and it makes complete sense now looking back, but she says Xerox was already managing the documents. Why not manage the information inside of them? And ACS also offered reoccurring revenue through their contracts that they had with these larger corporations and governments as well. It was more predictable than the hardware sales. It gave Xerox a footprint in a public sector where ACS was a dominant player. This is how you survive. Sometimes you survive through acquisition. You say, you know what, this is what I do really well, but if I partner up with someone else that does this other thing well, then we could actually be a monopoly. We could actually be a major player. We could actually weather through the recession. We could actually weather through the economic collapse if we join together. Now, at that time, this wasn't a popular decision. She actually got criticized for wanting to do this acquisition from people within her company, from people on the board, from outsiders. People had an opinion on this. As soon as she had this idea, as soon as she said, this is what we're going to do, they already started criticizing her. Mind you, she's already a Black woman, CEO of a Fortune 500 company. So one of her best ideas at that time was not popular. The decisions that you make now because you have vision, that vision was given to you. That vision was given to you to execute. Sometimes people are not going to understand it until 10 years later, 20 years later. It's going to look like you were right. It's going to look like everyone was agreeing with you at that time. But that wasn't the case. But she knew this deal was going to expand the business. She knew it wasn't going to be easy because now you're getting ACS employees, you're getting more people you have to manage. But she also knew that this deal was necessary and would bring in revenue. She understood what the future would look like. Ursula would go on after a successful acquisition. In 2016, she steps down as a CEO and she moves into a chairman position at Xerox. At the time of her retirement, I see that she was a board member at companies like Uber, ExxonMobil, Nestle, American Express. She was a chairwoman of Vion, this telecom communication company. And by the time she retired, I'm not trying to pocket watch here, but her career earnings exceeded over 50 million, and I'm sure it's probably even more than that. It's not taken in consideration like stock options and so forth. And she was listed among the world's most powerful women by Forbes and Fortune. Her business legacy is pretty simple. She transformed Xerox into a diversified tech services company. She proved that visionary leadership doesn't require a playbook. It requires boldness. You have to make a decision. She remained a powerful voice for STEM education, diversity. Ursula Burns didn't just shatter ceilings. She redefined leadership with intellect, candor, strategy, all while managing billions in assets and influencing the trajectory of one of America's iconic corporations. What she was known for was her bold strategic thinking. Acquiring that company for $6.4 billion, that was a signature move. That was a career defining move. That move could have cost her career. It could have cost her her job. It could have made Xerox, the company, non existent if it did not work. She led Xerox through the 2008 financial crisis. She was known for being an adaptable and quick to pivot leader. All in all, she was a systems thinker. Remember, we talked about that in the previous episode. She was a systems thinker with CEO instincts. She was able to see both the macro and also the micro. Her style wasn't flashy, but it was effective, it was grounded, and it was smart. Here are some of the lessons that you could learn from Ursula's playbook and her career. Start where you are and use what you have. Where you are is not who you are. Burns didn't come from privilege. She came from a housing project. She didn't wait for a perfect circumstance. She made the most of what was available, whether it was a library book, listing engineer salaries, or a summer internship. She took advantage of what was available to her. She was scrappy. Stay authentic. I don't know how to be someone else was one of the things that she would say. Don't try to fit molds that you aren't meant to be fit in. Ask bold questions. You have to be able to challenge authority with facts and not emotions. Early on in her career, she was able to ask tough questions. That was one of the things that people liked about her. She asked the tough questions. You want to be able to ask bold questions. Ask the question. Not any question, but listen and ask bold questions. Say yes to roles. Say yes to opportunities that are going to stretch you. I really recommend this. And Ursula did this. She took on new departments. She relocated internationally. She did whatever it took to learn the business. Growth lives outside of your comfort zone. Remember that. Other thing I want you to take away from Ursula's playbook was how she built a 360 view of the business. She worked in engineering, she worked in marketing, she worked in operations, she worked in HR, she worked as an assistant. She did everything. She needed to understand the business. Often, small business owners wear many hats. Lean into that. Learn it. If you're going to be doing it, learn it. Also, surround yourself with advisors. Burns credits mentors that played a significant role in her life. They shaped her confidence and gave her directions. Find mentors, peer groups, or communities who could help you along the way. The other thing I want you to take away is don't outsource your core. Many times, the way you make money, you're so quick to wanting to outsource it. Do not do that. Make sure that whatever the core is of your business, you keep that in house. Don't outsource your vision, your customer relationship, or quality control. Those are really the heart of your business. And lastly, one of the things I love about her that I learned from her, and I'm just reading through the list that I've made, is to own your story. Own your story. You have a story, and don't be ashamed from where you've come from. Don't be ashamed of what's happened to you. Don't be ashamed of yesterday. Own everything that's happened to you and redirect it into the direction you want it to go. This was a really great and fun episode for me to do. I did a lot of research on Ursula, and I am glad I had that encounter with her years ago when I was in high school. And looking back, I could see a lot of the things that she experienced in her life, how it shaped to define her. And I was fortunate that I met her and I was able to relive that moment again in memory of our encounter, of speaking to her, of hearing her story that day. I hope me sharing this with you all that you enjoyed her journey, her story, and you're able to take some things that she's done and apply it to your life, apply it to your business, apply it to your career, apply it and execute on it and redefine and rebuild your habits to make sure that it's incorporated in your day to day. I hope that you also enjoyed this and you're enjoying the Unignorable series. I'm really enjoying doing the series, the Unignorable series, where I'm highlighting trailblazers, I'm highlighting people, moments that are shaping business and culture. And I hope that you are enjoying this series as much as I am. I'm putting in a lot of hours creating and scripting, researching the backstories, the things that people don't report on, the things that people have forgotten. And I'm making sure that we're not forgetting these trailblazers. I'm making sure we're not forgetting the moments that are defining and redefining what we know as the business today. These are really important moments because we could take and use some of these in order to learn from them, in order to build our own businesses, build our own brands. I'm hoping you're enjoying this, and also make sure you share this, make sure you repost it on social media. I really do appreciate you coming along with me on this journey. And until next time, I'll see you later. All right.
It's been a long time and I miss this feeling. It feels like freedom, it feels like healing. Floating off the floor, past the ceiling. The wind in my hair, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel as I'm taking flight. Man, I'm feeling like myself again. Hey, man, I'm feeling like myself again. It's been a long time